me about it. Come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspirational perspective.
Man, do I have an interesting topic for you today. But I want to start with a story. I'm going to start it with a story. And this story is about, well, I learned this story from Earl Nightingale, the late, great Earl Nightingale. You can call him a self-development expert extraordinaire. And likely if you're up listening to me this time in the morning, then you care about your overall development. But in this story, Earl Nightingale talks about a businessman. And this businessman set a goal. And his goal was to build his business to a certain level. And at this level, basically, he would get to an income point where he could stop. Like he could completely stop, meaning there was no more goals to set. There was nothing else to do. He could stop. He could go on and live his life. And the plan or the goal was to build these businesses, generate this revenue to the point where he could actually finance his top goal, which was to travel the world on a cruise liner. And once he got to that point, he would be, quote unquote, done. This is the idea, right? Sounds like a fairly noble goal, if you ask me. There's a flaw in it, and I'm going to come back to that flaw in a moment. So anyway, he builds his business, begins to produce the revenue, does all the things that he intended to do, all the way to the point where he can turn his business over to a board of directors, hire a brand new CEO, and he could leave. As a matter of fact, I believe he maybe even sold the business. And he could leave. Bought a ticket on this cruise liner that was traveling the world. And immediately began to realize, upon the completion of that particular goal, that he wasn't really clear on what else he intended to do or what else he wanted to do. And so what he began to do is purchase fiction and romantic novels, and he would read these novels during the day and go on land wherever they might be and explore. But without an aim or a goal, he began to pick up habits. One of the habits that he picked up was drinking. And again, because there was nothing to do with these days, these long voyages between countries or between cities, what ended up happening is he was quickly given over to his drinking habit. And so the drinking and reading became the goal. The next drink, the next book. Didn't take much time for him to eventually drink himself into a coma and pass away from alcohol-related illnesses. So why would I start the show with a story like that? Well, today's topic, and what I want to talk about, is knowing ourselves, getting to know ourselves, tips for getting to know yourself. And first thing I want to say, if you hear that and you're like, oh, I'm good today, I know myself, then listen to this psychological fact. Psychologists say that most human beings have very little knowledge of themselves. Very, very little knowledge of themselves. So much so that we are poor predictors of what we will do in certain circumstances and situations and what we won't do. So right now, if you're like, oh, no, I know myself and I know what I wouldn't do, or I would absolutely not do that, consider that given the right circumstances or even the right situation, you may find yourself doing things, participating in things, behaving in ways that you never imagined you would. Now, I know this is triggering, especially on a Sunday morning. Folks want to wake up feeling righteous. And mind you, I said folks want to wake up feeling. But just because I feel it doesn't mean that's my reality. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this exploration of self. Here we are, 2022. Here you are, 2022. Big question to ask yourself is, who are you in this moment? Who are you this year? More importantly, who will you be? Most believe they know themselves. Most of us believe we know ourselves, when most of us actually don't. So what steps can we take to get to better know ourselves? Socrates said, know thyself. And I want to take us back to this space of time when Socrates lived, because it was a very, very different time than the time that we live in today. Much more space, much more time, still 24 hours in a day. But the reason I say much more space is because these men, these women weren't plagued with the level of distraction that we're plagued with today. There was no social media, no movies, no video games, just an opportunity to speak with other people, talk with other people, philosophize, but most importantly, to actually be with oneself. To actually sit and contemplate why you did the things that you did. And I imagine they took far less action than we take, because we have the opportunity to take far more action than they do. Wake up in the morning, you can like a couple of posts, you can read a few things. I mean, we have so much information coming at us today that we are highly distracted. I even noticed my own level of distraction many times. Like, wow. And I like to consider myself in some ways somewhat disciplined. But I think this is the thing that I'm questioning this morning. And a conversation like this, it has to start with some level of humility for all of us, understanding that we don't really fully know ourselves. And even if you feel like, all right, Linal, man, you're really pushing it and this is triggering me, then you have to ask yourself, if you truly know yourself, why are you being triggered? If it's not triggering you, but just kind of creating some level of curiosity, well, that's a good thing. Because in the pursuit for us to really know ourselves, one of the first things we have to do is observe everything about ourselves without projecting what we're observing or what we're feeling onto other people. To actually be with it. Why do I feel this way? What's going on for me? Why do these words trigger me? What about this don't I like? Like the focus stays on me. And again, this is something incredibly difficult for us to do. Because almost all the time what we do is we feel something, and if we don't like the feeling, then we will project it. All the way to the point of accusing someone else for making us feel that way. Why did you make me feel like this? And then you have to ask yourself, how could someone make you feel anything? This is always a function of me. So here's some questions to begin asking. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of self-control? Again, we're talking about knowing yourself. And when I say this, I mean across the spectrum. Self-control with what you eat, self-control with how you exercise, self-control sexually, self-control with your emotions, self-control with your attitude, self-control with your money, self-control in the workplace, self-control with your boss. Like, what's your level of self-control? Because what happens is when we get into the conversation of whether or not I know myself, what most of us do, and I know this because this is what I tend to do, or where I tend to lean, is I like to go after a subject or a place where I know I'm good. Oh, Linal's talking about self-control. I have self-control. I'm really good with this. And it's one thing of an infinite number of different things where I could explore self-control. What about discipline? When it comes to discipline, it's very clear, and again, in the studies I've done on self-discipline, what most psychologists say again about discipline is that many of us, the discipline that we've created at this point in our lives has come through many, many, many small increments of change. Small increments. And I'm sharing that with a person who tends to be impatient with themselves. Because here we are, 2022, 9 days into the year. And I know some of us have had breakdowns with our goals, if we've even had the courage to set the goal. And if you're not playing an intentional game in 2022, why not? Do you really know why you've made a decision to continue living with a lack of intention in your life? Again, the conversation is about how well do you know yourself? I have to be present to where I deceive myself and where I tell myself stories about me that I begin to believe that aren't necessarily true. Stories like, I'm kind, I'm genuine, I'm nice to most people. And maybe you are. But maybe you aren't. Who's the judge? As a child, I grew up in a very religious way. And what I mean by a religious way is every Sunday morning, every Sunday evening, every Tuesday evening, every Friday evening, and on Saturday afternoons, I knew where I would be because it was part of the ritual, part of the consistent ritual that my parents participated in, that I then participated in too. One of the things about rituals and routines is that after a certain amount of time, these rituals and routines become mindless, where we don't even explore the reasons for doing it. It becomes part of our social habit. And often, religion does this. My wife and I were out on a date Friday, and we were sitting across in the restaurant from what we believe were two Muslims. It's about 3 p.m., and it was time for prayer. And without even much of a conversation, the husband gets up from his seat, goes around the corner in the restaurant to a more secluded place, and began to say his prayers. Now, my wife and I both admired this. There's something to admire about ritual because it does create a certain level of discipline or even self-control, which is one of the reasons I believe as humans we're attracted to religion, because we want elements of discipline and self-control in our lives. After he got done praying, came back to the table, and then his wife went to pray. And again, I thought to myself, wow, that's special to create time in the middle of the day, no matter what it is that you're doing, to remember the Creator and to pause and reflect on his kindness. But then I thought to myself too, but wait a second, you may be giving this couple too much credit. Because in that moment of time that they prayed, do I really truly know if they connected? or they just went through emotion. Emotion that would actually, in many ways, cause their emotions or soothe their emotions around who they be and the structure that they've created. And here's the thing, only they would know. But then, are they even asking themselves the question? So I thought about them, then I thought about me, and I thought to myself, what can I do in my days to bring the Creator's presence into my life on a consistent basis? Like, how can I, in some ways, take that ritual in the religion of Islam to pray 5 times a day? How can I bring something like that into my life? But also, how could I bring it into my life with true awareness? And that question really got me, because then I had to search myself and really begin to play with who I am and what and how I show up and what this would actually be doing for me. The question of, who is Linal really, and why is he looking to deploy or potentially adopt this ritual? Am I trying to deceive myself? Am I trying to better myself? Is it really truly a function of getting closer to the Creator, or a function of absolving myself of emotions that I'm not close to the Creator? And this is really the conversation that I want to have today about knowing ourselves, a deep inquiry into who I am, who you are, and who we all be in the grand scheme of life. One of the conversations we had yesterday in the workshop was a conversation about what purpose and greatness truly is. Often when we think about greatness, we think about fame. But in the measure of greatness, who's really truly great? A person who is famous and known by many, or the person who is unknown, that through a loving, connected conversation in the dark that no one knows about saves a life? Guide some young person or even mature person down the path of life when they were looking to take their own life. How do we measure greatness? And so then again, how I measure greatness is an indication of the level of connectedness I have with who it is I truly be. We've learned in our society today, even with our cell phones, we've been programmed to watch other people, to watch what they do, to watch how they do it, to watch where they go, to watch what they wear, to watch what they say. We're programmed to watch others. And then in that programming of watching others, we're programmed to then make judgments about what we believe. Oh, I wouldn't have put that together. I don't think that outfit works. And by the way, we say it with such confidence and comfort. But when is the last time that you watched yourself like a stranger? When is the last time that you went through your own news feed on social media and evaluated your own post, judged or speculated about what you've written or what you've worn and why you wore it, what your intent is and what the hidden message is, or your why behind doing what it is that you do? And do you even know? Right now, somebody's like, that's why I don't do social media. Well, why don't you? Do you know why you don't? And why do you have judgment about those who do? Again, in this conversation, you're going to find how easy it is to revert back to what others do. And I want to keep the conversation on us, on me. At one point in the workshop yesterday, as we were talking about purpose, one of the members of the cohort asked me a question. And one of the things I noticed about the question is that in many ways, she had taken her focus off of her and began to place it on everyone else, what others think, what others do. And that workshop is an intimate date with yourself. And when I reflected it, I saw the smile where she was like, okay, I did do that. But many of us don't realize how easy it is to take the conversation off ourselves and put it on other folks. One of the big questions I want you to write down is, why? Why do I? Why do I? Coming into 2022, do I feel stronger or weaker? And why? Do I deceive myself? And if I deceive myself, how do I deceive myself? And if it's truly deceit, how can I get underneath my deceptive ways? Now, there's something about language, and right now it just hit me, something about language that I want to discuss, because there's certain words that have emotional triggers, and this is the power of language, right? Even this whole idea of deceit. So let's talk about deceit real quick. I don't want to just jump past that. Because when I say I deceive myself, I remember growing up in church where often people were accused of self-deception. And what can happen for many of us is we can put a block up where, no, I'm not deceived. I'm not deceived. And we don't even understand what self-deception really truly is. Because self-deception is as simple as saying, today is the first day I begin to implement my goals. And then deceiving myself into waiting another day. That's self-deceit. A commitment was on the table that you conned your way out of. That's deceit. And the biggest con man in many of our lives is not the person who's trying to social engineer your money away, but it's us. Because we can convince ourselves to do things that we committed to not doing. All it takes is the right circumstance or the right situation. So then again, let me go back and ask this question. It's a very simple question because today's show is really a simple inquiry into who are you and do you really know? And is the focus there? Where do I lie to myself? One of the examples I share, one of the great questions I got from one of the young ladies in the workshop, she said, Linal, it appears that you're telling us that we dupe ourselves. Can you give an example of where you've duped yourself? I said, yeah, I can. So I began to tell her a story about my health and well-being goal. And see, this is what I want to get to. Like, we have to get to a point where we can sit back and observe ourselves, because this is the key, the fundamental key to self-improvement. I can go the whole year and have lots of great subjects and lots of great titles. None of it matters if you can't get with this conversation. So what I shared with her was, well, I can go straight to my health and well-being goal and tell you how I duped myself. And one of the things that I did is last year working with my trainer, I got to a certain part in the training where the trainer said, okay, here's what I need you all to do. I need for you to go through these exercises in a particular way. And part of what I do is progressive overload, right? So I don't lift incredibly heavy, but I lift very slow. And so, for instance, if I'm doing a bicep curl, then how it basically goes is 1, 2 up, you hold for 2 seconds, and then 1, 2, 3 down. Now, right there is a place I had been duping myself from the very beginning, right? Because I wasn't counting always the way I was supposed to count. Okay, again, we're talking about how we deceive ourselves because we want to get to completion and feel good. And so then we say, I did that. when in essence, no, you didn't. Because to really do, and this is one of the things the trainer would emphasize, to really do this right in progressive overload means that you have to be able to do 3 sets of 12 all the way to the end. And I'm just using this one exercise, but 1, 2, up, hold for 2 seconds, and 3 seconds down. 1, 2, 3. And then again, 1, 2, up, hold for 2 seconds. And then they say when you hold for 2 seconds, like you actually pull the muscle together. So when I'm telling this, I'm telling one of the women in the cohort about how the trainer said, okay, now I want to push you to a new area, but what you need to do is you need to drop your weight by 25%. What do I say? As a man, I don't need to drop my weight. I'll still do this. And so I tried to do this exercise that he had given us without dropping the weight, and I injured myself. And here's one of the things that happens, right? When we do these things, then that's when we come like there's a sense of awareness. It's funny because on my vacation, I threw my back out. And as soon as I did it, there was a sense of awareness around what have I done and why did I do it and what does this mean and what even led me to do this? And you kind of begin reflecting on yourself in ways. And that's one of the things that sickness, injury, etc. does. Gives us an opportunity to turn inward and actually get present to the lies that we tell ourselves and how we deceive ourselves. And I fundamentally believe that as human beings, unless we can fully accept the fact that we're deceptive and that the deception is mostly run on ourselves, maybe not other people, maybe other people, but that's not the conversation I'm having today, right? But mostly on ourselves, if we can fundamentally understand that we are self-deceptive organisms and that it's really navigating the cloud of that truly helps us know who we are, that's where true growth is. Somebody's having a real hard time with this, and I'm gonna change the language just a little bit because one of the things that therapists often talk about is this whole function or characteristics of denial. One of the things they talk about is denial and how we deny certain realities about ourselves. And let me give you an example of what I mean when I talk about, because again, language is so powerful. So when I say self-deceit, self-lies, I already know people are like, ooh, I don't know about this. So let's talk about denial. Here's how denial works. I could experience trauma as a child. And then as an adult, having not addressed the trauma, I will deny that it's had an impact on me. Oh, that didn't matter. Wasn't that big of a deal. And as simple as it sounds, you all, as simple as this is, this could be self-deceit. And it's self-deceit if I allow it in that place, and just in that one place, where else am I allowing it? I've shared with you all openly that as a child, I was sexually abused. And one of the lies that I told myself is because it was a woman, it didn't matter. Well, that doesn't matter. Yet, in my 20s, my early 30s, I can't navigate relationship with women. But that doesn't matter. And not until I actually admitted to myself that it mattered and that it needed to be explored could I transform my way of being in relationship. And this is what I mean when I talk about knowing ourselves. And part of what I want to do is provide questions and tips for how we get to know ourselves better in the next hour. But this is what I mean. I think many times we ignore our darkness. And that's why it shocks and surprises us. Like, oh, did I do that? Remember Steve Urkel, did I do that? Like, we ignore this part of us. And in the exploration of this part of us, it actually allows us to know what we're fully capable of. I'm reminded of Maya Angelou's quote. I got to look it up to get it right. I don't want to mess this one up. but Maya Angelou's quote about being human, right? And how to deny myself or to in any way believe that what someone else does, I'm not capable of, is to deny myself my own humanity because they're human. And if they can do it, means that I'm capable of doing the same thing. What's that quote? Put it in the Facebook stream from you guys. But such a beautiful quote because it's so on point. My life dramatically shifted and changed due to coaching. And part of that is because the coaching conversation is a self-inquiry conversation. There is someone else who is in some ways think of your coach as being in a helicopter and you're on the ground and they can see everything around you and you're like, well, I want to go forward. And they're like, yeah, but in order to go forward, you're going to have to, walk through a few barriers. And these are those barriers. And by the way, when they're pointing to the barriers, typically they're things about you that they can see in your life that show up in your language and your ways of being. One of the things, I was having a conversation with a new client who's coming on board in the next week. And in the conversation on Friday, I was sharing with her the first part of coaching. We spend the first month exploring your cognitive distortions. What are cognitive distortions? They are mental illusions that actually create the filter that allow you to lie to yourself. So in order for me to work with somebody and really begin to open them up to a new level of self-development, one of the first steps is to expose the lie that they've been telling themselves. And sometimes the lie is, I'm not enough. Some of us are deceived. See, this is not just a conversation about being deceived in a narcissistic way or in something like that. Like often we think about when I say we deceive ourselves, right? The word is so pungent, right? It's so visceral that we get triggered by it and we don't really get to the crux of it. Some of us are deceived into believing that we don't matter. Like my voice doesn't matter. My life doesn't matter. And we're carrying that deception. And we're carrying it so well that we're not moving powerfully in our lives, because if we really began to get to know ourselves, first and foremost, understanding that I'm a spirit in a body, and that spirit links me to the Creator, and that I'm a child of God, which means that I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, and that I'm supposed to have an impact, and I have to stay in this inquiry so I can have an impact. That's one of the ways many of us are deceiving ourselves, because we just don't believe that we're enough. How can I, flawed, wounded, do these things? And so then you're deceived into believing that you're smaller than you actually are. You're a child of God. So the deception is across the board. My mind goes back to my early 20s when I really struggled with my own self-image and who I was, and how knowing my purpose gave me an anchor to navigate so many of these different conversations. I think another way to answer my wife's question around how do you build self-awareness is to know your purpose. Because then, if I'm measuring all that I am and everything that I do against that purpose, it gives me, in some ways, a plumb line against to measure myself and to measure my life. So how do you build self-awareness? Maybe first is purpose. Purpose saved my life. Got another question here from Joyce, and she said, how do you address people pleasing, Linal? I think oftentimes that's why it's so hard to say no. Are there fears behind people pleasing? Maybe that's another lie we tell ourselves. I mean, again, so this whole notion of people pleasing typically means that, and so let's go back to purpose real quick, Joyce. This is why purpose is so important, because if purpose becomes paramount in my life, so execution of my life's purpose is paramount in my life, then, and I'm measuring myself against that purpose. In my case, my purpose is to lead and speak with passion and teach others all over the world to help myself and others live the best life possible. So then if I'm constantly measuring myself against that purpose, then I'll notice people pleasing. Because in order to please certain people, I have to actually abandon my purpose. And this is the beauty of purpose. This is the beauty of being in a purpose conversation. This is the beauty of knowing your life's purpose. I know someone's going to say, well, can you deceive yourself into believing that you have a purpose that you don't have? And I will say, that's why the course is so powerful, because part of what we do is we actually explore our passions, our talents, our strengths, the roles that we play in life. And we look at these different categories that we can begin to measure what truly is our purpose and what's not. Because we were designed for our purpose, which means I will have passions aligned with that purpose, which means I'll have God-given gifts that actually allow me to deliver on that purpose. So, great question. Are there fears behind people pleasing? And I would say absolutely there are fears behind people pleasing. Most of us want to please others because we're social beings. I want to please my wife. There are times when I can't. That's difficult. Especially if it's I know it's aligned with my purpose, and my reason for being is to deliver on my purpose. And what she wants me and needs for me is outside of that function in that moment, and I know this is a time for me to deliver on my purpose. If I find myself pleasing my wife instead of being aligned with the Creator and my purpose, it could be a place that I'm fooling myself, and a place that she begins to lose respect for me ultimately. First is purpose. I talked about purpose being your plumb line. The second is goals. See, goals, like, this is what goals do. Goals put you in a daily conversation about you. Because if I make a commitment to myself to do something, again, we're not talking about anybody else. If I make a commitment to myself to do something, I am going to transform my diet. Let's just stick on that for a minute. I am going to transform my diet. The difficulty that many of us have with doing this is gold. And the reason I'm saying it's gold is because this is your opportunity to get to know you. Why is this difficult for me? What is the pull? What is the tug? Why do I say I'm going to do something and I don't? And staying in that conversation for the year could transform your life. So then why don't you want to stay in the conversation? What pulls you away from the conversation? It's the simple resistance to go simple and live life by default like a droid that has us deny the importance of goals. But goals fundamentally help you get to know you because it puts you in these conversations. Again, I'm telling you, like when I went to the gym and I didn't do what the trainer said, it was all about achieving a goal. And then when I injured myself, I had to ask myself some questions because the goal was on the line. The goal was on the line. Linal, why did you do that? What is it? Is your ego so big that even by yourself you have to lift heavier than you're supposed to? Is this a matter of ego? So then I began to explore my ego in every other area. Yesterday we were talking about Beyonce and her song. My wife was talking. We were talking about Sasha Fierce, and then I took it to her ego, her alter ego. Right, Sasha Fierce is her alter ego. My wife and I, when we were on our date Friday, we were talking about this. And then I brought it to the workshop, and we were talking about Beyonce. I got a big ego, but I can back it up. I got a big ego. How the song go? But I can back it up. I can back it up because I got all this stuff. She don't say that, but I'm basically, because I got all this stuff. I got all this stuff. You know, that's kind of how it goes, right? Because it's like bling, 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 right? Anyway, so and we believe like, oh, okay, then she can have a big ego. Here's the thing about ego. Ego blinds us. It actually prevents us from having the spiritual conversation. It's the nemesis of the spirit. It's in many ways, the word is escaping me. It's the entitlement that humanity brings, that we actually deserve. Like, I deserve things. And this is why I love goals so much. Because it takes away the entitlement and completely shifts things to, where am I going? What am I looking to develop? What's next? So in my relationship, how do I develop a deeper level of communication and love with my wife? And if I can't, why is that? And what is it on my side that's preventing that? It creates a different level of self-inquiry. One of the biggest signs to me is when I have clients, I'm like, so, you want to develop a health and well-being goal, relational. I don't need a relationship goal. We're good. I'm like, oh. Because here's what I know: if you're not progressing, you're digressing. And almost all of them come back and say, hey, you know what? Let's let that relationship go. Goals. Goals teach us about ourselves. And it's a difficult conversation to be in. But it's the most enlightening conversation to have. I don't believe there's nothing more righteous than a conversation about yourself, because the ability for you to be righteous means you have to be in conversation with yourself about who you be and what you do and the intentions that you have. But are you willing to explore it all? That really becomes the question. Are you willing to explore it all? Hey, do me a favor, grab this charger. Are you willing to explore it all? Why do I procrastinate? It's down in there. It's for the computer. Why do I procrastinate? Can I say no? Why do I put off my goals? I'm going to say this, and I'm going to try to make it as clear as I can. If there's anything that goals do, goals help us explore our cowardice. Let me say it again. Goals help us explore our cowardice. So what do I mean by that? Goals help us explore our cowardice. In order to have a goal, you have to be courage-oriented, because goals introduce the opportunity for failure, the opportunity for emotional distress across the board. Let me tell you something, man. You cannot stick a person who is self-actualized into the wheel. You can't make them a cog in the wheel. They just won't fit. They won't fit. And self-actualization is, in many ways, the understanding and the knowing of self. And so the more I understand about myself, the less I fit in. Maybe that's another reason why we don't do this. But the less I fit in, because I'm in a completely different conversation than most of the people around me. I'm in a different mental conversation. I'm in a different verbal conversation. The things that excite me or the things that attract me are going to be different when I'm self-actualized. Meaning that I'm in touch with my spiritual being. The real flame that gives me life. Part of the example I gave yesterday on the course was the course ends. The course will end if my spirit leaves. The same way this radio show will end if my spirit leaves. So why is that not part of my daily conversation? If my spirit is that important, right? If it's paramount to everything that I'm able to do, then why is it not part of my daily conversation? But then again, in knowing ourselves, few of us actually admit to ourselves that we're spiritual beings. Why? Well, now, man, that's, It's out there. It's abstract. It's not tangible. So goals. Then you come to this pillar of purpose and spirituality, right? And this is how I think about goals, and this is how I teach goals in the Slay Your Goal course. By the way, we're in the middle of the 30-day challenge, and you can still join for $1. I want to put that out there. You can still join for $1. I'm going to put the link in the Facebook page for those of you listening, but you can still join the 30-day challenge, you all. We're day 9 in the month. It's not over. And again, goals is how we get in this conversation. And so if you want to join the Slay Your Goals community, an absolutely outstanding community, right now we're meeting at noon on Mondays. And the conversation that we're going to be having is talking about creating goals that you can see and feel, and providing this level of goal setting support, because this is how we deepen the knowledge that we have of ourselves, and we stay in conversations about ourselves. And right now I'm thinking about some of the growth that I saw in members over the last year. And I had a member last year who came to one of the sessions ready to get divorced. Ended the year more in love with her spouse than she started the year. But it didn't come through her spouse. Her spouse didn't change. She got more intimately acquainted with herself. This is the power of self-knowledge. See, here's what I love. Here's the thing about money. Money is tangible and is linked back to who you be. It has a lot to do with who you be. I'm not talking about stuff. I'm talking about your relationship with money. Okay? How you relate to money is a phenomenal place to better understand yourself and to begin asking yourself questions. Questions like, why can't I keep money in my pocket? Why don't I have, and the first thing that comes to people's mind is, I don't get paid enough. That's not it. I promise you, that's not it. That's not it. I've supported people that have made $30,000 a year and had no needs or wants. And they were able to hire me, and hiring me was up to 1/3 of their yearly income. It's how they set themselves up in the relationship they had with money that actually made it possible. And then that person tripled it within the year. So the relationship, like there was already a solid relationship with money, if you get where I'm going. They just weren't making a lot. And they were like, oh, if I shift a few things and I get coaching and I create more awareness, then I can make more money. So the relationship was already empowered when they came, because when you can finagle $30,000 and do some of the things this person was doing and have the financial security this person had, I think that's admirable. So the first thing people say is, well, I don't have money. Or you say, well, Linal, you know how they do us in our community, and they ain't paying us. And I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you. Today's conversation is getting to know yourself. What are you doing with your money? I was listening to a podcast where they say the majority of Americans eat their money up. I thought about my wife and I. I'm like, well, we make pretty good money. I think it would be staggering. I'm just going to tell on us. I think it would be staggering if I told you all what we spent on food. Now, we're blessed, and I know. My wife and I talk about it from time to time. But it would be staggering. We have a fast life, a fast-paced life. We eat healthy, but it would be staggering. We could spend less. We could spend less. It would be staggering. But we know it, or at least I know it, because I'm constantly looking, right? Now, what don't you know about your money? One of the things in the 4 pillars of life that we have, when I talk about setting a vision for 2022 and setting goals, one of the things we talk about is financial clarity. Because in my experience with clients, whether they have money or not, the one thing they don't have is financial clarity. What is financial clarity? Clarity is actually knowing how much money you have. This sounds weird, but it's true. Many of us don't even know how much money we have. I'm like, well, Linal, I'm broke. I know I only got $2 left. So then you got to ask yourself, well, why am I broke? Right? But many of us don't know how much money we have. And these are the schemes they play, right? Because your money's put away in a 401k. You don't even know it's getting eaten by fees. Like, we don't even, like, what are the fees? You don't know. You have very little financial clarity. How do those fees calculate over the next 20 to 30 years? You don't know. You have very little clarity. When are you going to retire? How much money will you have when you retire? How much money will you be bringing in a year when you retire? Do you really know? When you really get down fundamentally, like, and this is really what I want us to understand. When you really get down fundamentally to the responsibility of being self, you don't have time to worry about anybody else. Like, you don't have the space because you don't even got you on lock. Like, I don't even have me on lock. Why am I worried about you and what you're doing? Oh, my goodness, you see the new car they just bought? I wonder how they'd afford that. You need to turn it right on yourself and say, and what are we doing? And what are we doing, and how am I doing it? How are we living? How can we go to the next level financially? God bless them. God, I hope, you know what? I hope they got everything in order. Maybe I can learn from them. Maybe, let me ask you, are you all, it seems like you guys got things. Can you teach me something? How well do you know you? Let's spend the last part of the show on purpose and spirituality, to bring it around full circle. Do you know your life's purpose? This is the first, so do you know you? And if your purpose is your identity, I had to pull out my notes. If your purpose is your identity, I actually want to read this on the radio. If your purpose is your identity, then if we're having a conversation about knowing ourselves, then the first step is to actually know your life's purpose. And somehow we can fool ourselves into believing that we can know ourselves without knowing our purpose. And then we just kind of move through life saying, well, purpose, I'll get to know it. I'll get to know. And we don't realize what we're leaving on the table. I firmly believe that one of the reasons I am where I am in my life is because I had the gift of distinguishing my purpose at the age of 23. So 22 years later, at the age of 45, I'm grounded in a way that in my purpose that has allowed me to support and reach other people. If I didn't know my purpose, I'd be ill-equipped to help anybody else. So then you have to begin asking yourself these fundamental questions. Like, if you don't know your purpose, why not? Like, what trick or lie or deception are you running on yourself to have you put this off over and over and over again? Because to know your life's purpose is to know who you are, to know why you're alive. But this is also what purpose provides. The purpose defines who we are and what we should be offering the world. Purpose provides the template for being, creating, and doing our life's work. Purpose is not a job. Purpose is not a title. Purpose is not a salary. I added that. Those are just things you've acquired by doing. And I think that's what we're obsessed with. In the 21st century, we're obsessed with doing something. Never confuse who you are, again, going back to identity, with what you do. Never confuse who you are with what you do. Never confuse who you are with what you have. Never confuse who you are with the stuff that you quote unquote own. I think right now about my mother. And the last time my siblings were in her house packing up her things. She left all that stuff behind, man. It means absolutely, it's not who she was. Like elements of her, traces of her are there. But who my mother was to me has nothing to do with the things. It's the spiritual impact that she had on my life. What spiritual impact are you having? Never confuse who you are with what you do and what you have. Your purpose is your identity. So when I hear a person say, Linal, I'm not sure on what my purpose is, what I also hear is, I'm not sure who I am. Linal, I don't think I know my purpose. What I also hear is, I don't think I know who I am. When I say, Linal, I've been thinking about my purpose and I need to take your course and I've been putting it off. What I hear is, Linal, I've been thinking about who I am and what I am and I know I need to know better who I am, but I continue putting off getting to know myself better. That's what I hear. Your purpose is your identity. When I hear people say, Linal, I know my purpose, but I'm having such a hard time living my purpose, what I hear is, I know elements of me, but I'm having a hard time putting it together, putting myself together, actually living out who it is I know I'm supposed to be. What I hear is, Linal, I know my purpose, but I keep deceiving myself into believing I have time. I keep lying to myself, telling myself that it's difficult and I have time. Or I keep lying to myself, telling myself that I don't have the ability or the wherewithal, or that I'm not enough to fulfill on that purpose. Your purpose is who you be. Your purpose connects you to your internal seed of greatness. When people tell me they don't know their purpose, what I also hear is I have no idea how to fully grasp and hold on to my greatness. So then what that tells me is that in this journey of life, you're lost. You're lost. So what do we do? How do we bring this home? Well, the first piece is to remember that, man, in the journey of purpose and spirituality, that you are a spirit. And it could come as simply as shifting to a new way of praying, a new way of being, a new way of meditating, and communing with the divine and asking, but first and foremost, setting the goal. And you don't have to know how to get more intimately acquainted with yourself. You don't have to know how to set a goal. That's what I'm here for. I'll teach it. But you have to have the courage. Because then if I go back to what I shared at the top of the hour, it comes back to this truth that goals help us push past our cowardice. And I'm going to be bold enough to say that if you're not willing to set goals, you're a coward. And if you're not a coward towards me, you're not a coward towards anybody else. Well, it may impact us, but first and foremost, you're being a coward in terms of how you're living for yourself. Because you're not pushing yourself in the way that you could push yourself in a way that completely transforms your life. And to play a life without setting intentions, to play a life without living aligned with goals, it's a coward's way out. And then here's the thing. In every story, in every narrative, in every movie, the coward loses and loses horribly. And there's something about this 21st century that if you're not operating with intention, if you're not setting goals, you will get swallowed whole. They're not playing, man. They're looking to plug everybody in. I'm looking at the projections for the metaverse. They're saying, like, this is the spot to invest, man. Like, this is it. Every time something new comes out, a lot of y'all didn't join Facebook when it first came out. Like Facebook, what's that? Oh, you mean people putting their pictures online? Oh, I would never. Are you kidding? Oh, look at this. And you scroll, look at this. That's their baby. They put their baby on there. Ooh, I would never. Now look at you. If you don't operate with intention, with what they got coming, you will be lost. I'm telling you, I'm looking at it, I'm reading it, and I was sharing with the group yesterday. I feel like I'm obligated to understand it because they're looking to swallow folks whole. Man, I already can see it. You think television's got you? You think television's got you handcuffed? They're about to have people where they wake up in the morning and get into virtual reality. And if they got a job, as soon as they get home from work, they get back into their virtual reality. And it may not be attractive right now. The same way Facebook wasn't attractive in 2007. But now you can't stay off. If we don't bring a new level of intention and self-awareness to our lives, if you're not willing to set goals, if you're not, man, I'm telling you, like, hear the sound of my voice. See, because what's going to happen is, right, I don't know if it'll be our day, but it'll be the next production assistant. I'll be like, put together a compilation on when I talked about this stuff. Man. This is the time. Like, if we can't navigate this, and it's a lot. There are more distractions than we've ever had, right? I ain't even get on Netflix. And then it's not just Netflix now because Paramount has their own stream. Disney has their own stream, and you can get lost in Disney's. You can get lost in Netflix. You can get lost in Paramount's. Now HBO Max has come with it. Oh, we got it too. HBO Max. You can get lost in HBO Max. That's not even regular HBO. There's so much content out here to have you ignore you. To have you ignore who it is you're supposed to be, what it is you're supposed to do, and it's all affordable. It's all affordable, so it's the escape. But what's important? You are important. Your life is important. Your mission is important. Your purpose is important. Don't let them rob you. The worst robbery is the robbery you pay for, too, man. Like, we're paying for this robbery. Don't let them rob you.